Hello, everybody. We are back with another exciting edition of our weekly interview with Dr. David Schwartz, where we talk about all things Las Vegas, all things casino industry, what the latest trends are, where the industry is going, and all kinds of other fun stuff, including robot invasions. So, how are you doing this week, Dr. Dave?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm sure the listeners and the viewers would love to know that you just came from a PTA meeting.
Yes. I was the only man there. 30 plus women and one man. That man was me.
Yeah, a lot of people sign up for like yoga classes, like guys do, because it's like, man, the ratio is awesome. Not a lot of men go to PTA classes or PTA meetings for the
Yeah. Well,
ratio.
I'm chairing the Two Lunch Tuesday committee. So every second Tuesday of every month, we bring in a second lunch that goes to feed the homeless. And if anybody out there is interested in sponsoring it, we could use a lot of paper bags. So, lunch bags. So that's my latest thing. I'm trying to find a sponsor to hook us up with some lunch bags. But yeah, it was probably a lot. When I was a teenager, maybe I thought being in that situation would be really interesting. There's a lot more talk about budgets and stuff like that than I ever would have imagined would happen. So yeah, it was a very interesting meeting. It was a very interesting meeting. It's good. I know a lot more about how to handle my budget and how to submit my reimbursement forms and all that for the PTA. So it's pretty cool. It was pretty awesome.
Great. And as the year goes along, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more interesting, juicy gossip and rivalries being formed and cliques within the PTAs. That's how I imagine it anyway.
Yeah, it was really funny. They were talking about, well, we have all that girl stuff, and I'm just kind of sitting there like, So it was cool. It was funny. So yeah, I don't know. I got my committee there. Hopefully we get the kids to bring in the second lunches and get them to the people who need it.
That's great. Well, you're doing noble work, and the other noble work you do is keeping us informed about developments in the casino industry. And you've got two of your latest articles on Forbes that we need to catch up on. The first one is about the robot invasion in Las Vegas. You say they are coming, they are here, and it might not be a big deal. So tell us about the robot invasion.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. So this is specifically service robots. So these are robots that you would interact with when you come to Las Vegas. And if you've been to Planet Hollywood and the Miracle Mile shops, you've seen the Tipsy robot, that robot bartender. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. They're taking things that people can do, but having a robot do it instead.
And obviously, a lot of maybe people that make a living off being a bartender or doing a lot of things that the service robots are designed to replace may not be super pumped about the robot invasion.
Yeah, if I was a bartender, I wouldn't be that happy about the robot bartender just because it's taking away the job of a couple bartenders. You've got a whole bar and there's one robot doing all the work. Yeah, I don't know about that. Definitely, they've taken some jobs, but right now they're mostly novelty things, and at least that's some of the folks I talked to said that. Mostly, it's just there for the wow, this is new factor, as opposed to we're going to roll this out into every bar across the casino.
And so we've got 3 points, three main points in your article. They're coming, and so what are some of the? Well, they're coming and they're here. So what are some of the robots that if somebody visited today would see in Las Vegas?
We've got the robot bartender, Tipsy Robot. We've also got Fetch and Jet, that's Jet with two T's, who are at Vidara. And what they do is if you order a snack or something from room service, instead of them having a guest room attendant or somebody run it up or a runner run it up to you, they will have one of the robots run it up to you. And that is what that robot does. And they say it takes about 5 minutes.
So they have two robots that are basically the same, but they have different names, or these are different?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're different names. I think they're pretty much identical. It's from a company called Relay, which does this. And it's not like this is the first time this has been done in the world. It's been done before, but they're rolling it out in Las Vegas. And again, Las Vegas hospitality is a lot different from other places just because of the scale. Even Medora has like about 1,000 rooms. I forget the room count off the top of my head, but it's a pretty big property in relation to a lot of other properties out there where 300 rooms might be considered really big.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I can see the novelty aspect of sending fetch and jet up, especially nowadays when social media and sharing is and share. I mean, when I say sharing, I mean like sharing of somebody posts a photo on Instagram of them in Vidara getting like their mimosa delivered by Jet, the little robot. So I can see the novelty aspect of it. That maybe that's probably is a lot more expensive than a normal room service attendant to have Jet.
Yeah.
But there's some advertising value that comes from it.
There is, and also if the robot or when the robot breaks down, you need to have somebody who's probably pretty expensive repair it. That's not cheap. So you're basically substituting a relatively unskilled worker for a skilled worker who's probably going to have a much higher salary.
Understood. Yeah, because if Jet rolls up with the wrong brand of champagne for your mimosa, or like there's mustard on your burger, you didn't want it, that can be pretty frustrating when you're trying to reason with Jet about how they screwed up your order.
Yeah, and basically, I mean, the people are loading. You also need people to load it up. So pretty much, instead of me grabbing whatever, your Sun Chips and your Sprite or whatever you wanted from the pantry or whatever they have there and running it up to your room, I grab your Sun Chips and Sprite, I put it inside Fetch or Jet, and then they take it up to the room.
And it seems like long term, those are probably the jobs that are more in danger. Is the back office, kind of like an Amazon warehouse where it's just a bunch of robots that are flying around pulling things off shelves and then getting them on a truck. Like,
Yeah.
I'd imagine Vegas is never going to do away with that face to face. Hey, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. So nice to have you here. Like, because that's the service people care about. But probably all that back office stuff, a lot of it's going to like with the bartender. I don't think bartenders aren't going anywhere, but I can see a bar back going somewhere. Like if they got some sensor that sees that they're getting low on Jack Daniels, and then the little robot goes and finds a new one, or can even make the drinks, and the bartender's just like, hey, sir, you want another drink? And you know what I'm saying? Like they become the face. So it's the back office stuff is what's going to get killed, I can see. Right? I would predict.
Yeah, that's the whole issue. And there's actually this McKinsey report about it that I was turned on to by the culinary union folks. And so they're definitely aware of it. And it kind of says like, yes, we are going to lose a lot of jobs, but if you retrain people and if there's economic growth, that it could actually create more jobs. Although not doing bar back kind of stuff, not doing that, probably doing something else. I don't know, maybe Instagram of drinks. Who knows? Like it seems like that's where the growth is anyway.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, if they can, I just hope that they just keep the costs the same. If they can automate some costs back of house, and then they could just staff their casino floor better, and like have more people there to greet guests and make them feel special, as opposed to saying like, great, we replaced 5 people with 1 robot. Now let's just swallow up that profit. Part of me thinks that it's probably a little too ambitious to think some of these big public companies that have to hit quarterly earnings are going to think that way. But I don't know if what I just said made sense, but I just hope that rather than just capture the cost savings and profit, they like just staff up more and deliver great service, or go back to 3-2 blackjack or something.
I wouldn't hold my breath for that. Here's why. It's kind of the difference between what's right in the bigger picture and then what is right in the smaller picture. Smaller picture, their job is to drive shareholder revenues. So basically, if they're crossing the street and they have to do whatever to pick up that penny that they see in the street, if that drives shareholder revenues, that's what they do. It just makes no difference. Long term, and you would say, well, long term, you want to grow the business, you want to leave something good for the next people to come along. Yeah, long term, they should be reinvesting back in the customers. But that's not what we've seen happen in the Strip. And usually when are these innovations, it's keep labor costs down and make more money. What did we see with ticket in, ticket out and slot machines? It's not like they took all the people who were working in the back of the house, the hard count guys, the impress teams, all that, and said, hey, now you can go out on the floor and hang out with customers and chat with them while they play games. So that's not what we saw happen. Basically, a lot of those jobs went away. Yes, the slot attendants converted to customer service reps on the floor, and pretty much they're trying to get people to sign up for the card and do other stuff. But yeah, I mean, if they can save money in labor, they're going to save money in labor, and they're probably not going to pass it back on to the customer.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of the yeah, it's almost like the Walmart mentality, where like if Walmart could staff with 100% robots, they would absolutely do it to save a buck. Even though the experience of going to a Walmart versus, I don't know, Whole Foods or something is night and day, right? Like,
Yeah.
the long lines of Walmart. I don't know. Anyway,
Well, it's like Uber and Lyft, where they're looking at self-driving cars, and someday all those Uber and Lyft drivers are going to lose their jobs to self-driving cars.
mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and then, one scary proposition that a robot you brought up is that robots replacing pole dancers. You had a picture in the article of a pole dancing robot. What was
Yeah.
that thing about?
It was just during CES they did it. That was definitely a novelty thing. It was kind of very odd watching that. I think I don't know if I linked to the video clip, but you can definitely see it. It's pretty odd to see, but it's robots kind of doing pole dancing, which you wouldn't expect. And I guess again they look like robots now, but then someday when they're look more like people, it would probably look different. But it's definitely we're getting into some sci-fi stuff here, definitely with that.
Yeah, what was that movie with I think it was Scarlett Johansson a couple years ago, where gosh, I can't think of the movie, but it was like a female robot that like was attractive enough that a human was falling in love with her.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll think
Or
of it
it'll
later.
be like Lieutenant Commander Data from Next Generation, and he can paint. He can have a pet cat Spot whose gender switches over the course of the show, and he can do Sherlock Holmes cosplay, all that fun stuff. So I'm guessing maybe if we do have robotic or android pole dancers, they might be a lot more interesting than us.
Probably a lot more flexible. Uh, so the last bullet point was might not be a big deal. Obviously, we've been talking the last couple minutes about like it could be a big deal. What was the feedback from people at the union, from people you talked to that led you to think that this might not be a big deal?
Unions said they're interested in it and that they're looking at, and they negotiated in their recent contract language about retraining and stuff like that and automation. So union is definitely, they say they're on top of it. I talked to two professors outside of Vegas just to get a totally fresh perspective, and they both thought it was maybe a little bit overstated. One of the professors said she hoped that they would reinvest it in customers. And again, I would not hold my breath for that, just because, not saying that they're bad people, just that's not their job. Their job is to drive shareholder value, and that's not always the same thing. So I wouldn't hold my breath for that. But it's really fascinating because imagine coming to Vegas and never talking to a person.
It wouldn't be
You know,
fun. I
you
don't
get a
think.
self-driving Uber, you come to Vegas, you play, you check in with the kiosk, you order room service that's delivered by a robot, you go down, you play an electronic table game or a slot machine. We're kind of getting there.
Yeah, and if that's the experience, you don't need to go to Vegas. I mean,
Exactly.
like,
Exactly.
what makes Vegas so unique is just the atmosphere of all the people and the energy and like interacting. I remember seeing Steve Wynn give a talk, and I don't know if actually you're gonna do an article on Steve Wynn and the revelations with his the first accuser that ultimately led him to his downfall. And then it recently came out that she's like a total nut job, right? Like she said that like she knew Pablo Picasso and she was the artist for like all these things that I remember reading it. It was an AP article yesterday. I'm like,
Yeah.
she said all that, and this is like, I mean, granted, listen, I'm not saying that Steve Wynn didn't do any of this, but just reading that lady's article, I'd say reading her quotes, it definitely put a dent in her credibility.
Yeah, and there's, I'm not totally up in the situation, definitely not up in the legal situation, but I understand there were a couple accusers. This was one from, I think, Chicago, who kind of, seems to have some issues there, because I read it and it didn't really make a lot of sense to me.
I mean, she said that Kevin Wynn is her daughter, and that, right? Or is Kevin Wynn Steve Wynn's daughter's name?
Yeah, it's his oldest daughter.
Yeah, and she said, the accuser said that that's my daughter. And I mean, it's one thing for men to say like, I'm the father. No, I'm the father. Like there's a
Yeah,
debate about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I think like Elaine Wynn, there's probably I don't think there's much of a debate about who's the mother of that daughter.
Well, when I interviewed Steve Wynn for Grandissimo and he talked about going out to Caesars, he said how Elaine was back home in Miami pregnant with, or maybe it wasn't Miami, wherever they were. She was back home pregnant with their first child. So the timelines do match up. And she was born in 1967. That was 66. So yeah, I'm not really seeing that possible. But again, I don't know. It could be somebody who has some issues and probably should be, talking to other people to try to get help for that.
Yeah. Anyway, I digressed, but what brought me up on the Steve Wynn thing was that I saw a speech where he talked about how the mindset he tried to give his front of house employees, and he said everybody comes to our resort are the stars of their own show, and we're playing a part in that. We want to make them feel like the celebrities, make them feel special, and a robot can't do that. Even if a robot was like the total most perfect chatbot or whatever, like, hello, Mr. Schwartz, and like knew your favorite drink, you wouldn't feel special because it's not a person. It's a robot and some algorithm is telling it what to say to you. It just doesn't, it won't feel as good as just another human being treating you well.
Yeah, and then there's also the potential for people to be malicious. And just having watched so much science fiction and read so much science fiction, it's kind of beaten into my brain that yes, the robots will betray us and the robots will turn on us and whatever. So I am like, we should be afraid of the robots. I was really interested to learn from Professor Frumer that the people are actually beating up on the robots, and people vandalizing robots is a real worry. And apparently, when you have a person alone with a robot, there's a really good chance that they will try to take it apart, either because they're curious or they'll just try to hurt it just because they're sadists. So it's
right, or they're in Las Vegas and they're like 12 shots of vodka deep, and all of a sudden Jet rolls up with their new bottle and someone smashes the old bottle, their empty bottle of vodka on top of Jet. Or I can definitely see in Las Vegas some robot vandalism going down.
But like, remember the dude who killed that bird at the flamingo? It was a big thing a couple years ago. I think it was a law student or something, and he decapitated one of the exotic birds. It's pretty sick.
You know what? I feel a lot worse for that bird than if you told me Jet got decapitated. Jet the robot.
Well, I think that's what happened to the hitchhike. There's this hitchhiking robot that went all over Europe. They sent it to the United States. I think it lasted 3 weeks. Somebody in Philly decapitated it or something.
Yeah, of course it would happen in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it was in Philly. So the former Philadelphia resident.
The city of brotherly love. They don't have any brotherly love for robots, just for humans.
No, or Santa Claus.
Or Santa. Okay, so we touched on pole dancing robots, drink delivering robots, bartending robots. Before we move on to sports betting, were there any other interesting robots that could show up in Las Vegas?
No, that was pretty much it. You're going to have kiosks, you're going to have delivery robots, and who knows what else.
All right, well, let's move on to sports betting. There is a point I want, tying back to what you said earlier about you could have an experience in Las Vegas where you don't even interact with anybody. Sports betting, that is something that is definitely a lot of people want to bring mobile sports betting to these different markets and that's one where people could just do it from their phone, just place their bets, in-game bets. How do the casinos feel, before we get into the broader article, how do you think the casino companies feel about mobile sports betting overall? What's their attitudes?
I think they like it. I think that at one point this would have been the worst idea ever. At least they would have thought it was, because the whole idea was you get people into the casino and they spend 3 or 4 hours in front of a slot machine. And that's the whole purpose of Vegas. That's the whole purpose of any casino, is to get them there in the door. That's why they have the giveaways, which you talked about in the cruise. Mm-hmm. Remember, with the, picking up your iron or a toaster or whatever it is.
Yeah, your bread maker.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, because you want to get people in the casino because they'll gamble. And now they're saying this is a group of people that aren't going to be coming in here Let's just let them gamble at home or wherever they want to. So it makes it a lot easier.
So the trade-off is obviously, um, yeah, like you said, if they're forced to walk into the casino to place their sports bet, odds are they're going to maybe sit down at a blackjack table, get some food, whatever. They're going to make a lot more money, which is actually why the same argument that a lot of gas stations had when like it used to be you had to go inside the gas station to pay.
Yeah.
Like you could pump, but then you had to go in and pay. And when pay at the pump started coming out, a lot of gas stations resisted it because they weren't going to get that soda sale. They weren't going to sell the bag of peanuts or whatever. So this sounds pretty similar, right? But obviously they could produce a lot more revenue on sports betting if someone can do it from the convenience of their home on a Sunday morning while they're watching football.
Yeah, and the thing is, that person at Sunday morning watching football, they wouldn't be in the craps pit if they didn't have mobile sports betting. So they weren't going to be there anyway. So then why not let them gamble with you? So that's their attitude. And I kind of trace this to the trends where there's usually one big expansion area in gaming. So in the 90s, well, I'm going to give you two, it was tribal gaming contracts and riverboats. And that was the big thing. So all of a sudden, we're really into tribal gaming compacts and riverboats. Then it was Macau. Then it was, in Vegas at least, nightlife and all that stuff. And well, that's kind of fading now. So the next thing is sports betting.
And when you say the next thing, that you're saying that's what all the big casino companies are just kind of directing their focus on is sports betting is the next big thing. We got to get in front of it.
Yeah, so there was a couple really big announcements that I talk about in the article that just was fascinating to me that, wow, they're tweeting out about their mobile platforms and all this stuff. And 5 years ago, they never would have done that. It would have been a total non-story. Now, hey, this is the growth area. This is what we want people to know about. So I think that's the big difference.
So who do you think has the more aggressive, more interesting strategy after doing the research? I mean, is MGM and Caesars, do they have drastically different strategies? How does like maybe a William Hill, who's been a sportsbook operator inside different casinos, how are they approaching it? Obviously, DraftKings and FanDuel are in there, a couple traditional daily fantasy sports businesses. So what are some of the different strategies you've seen?
Well, you've got Scientific Games, which partnered with Caesars, so they'll be rolling out the platforms and offering the technology at all the Caesars locations, throughout the country. Then you've got MGM and Boyd, who made a deal, which, if I understand it correctly, would let MGM, so let's say there's a state like Indiana where MGM doesn't have a casino, but Boyd does. Boyd would be able, or MGM would be able to offer sports betting there through Boyd, and vice versa for Boyd. So they have that partnership where they're kind of sharing their states. So I think those are two ones that show that they want to get as broad a footprint as possible. So from MGM's perspective, they might not care if they have a casino in Indiana or whatever state. I'm just saying Indiana as an example, but they want people to be able to go on the MGM app, MGM Sports app. I think that's the goal. So then when you roll out national advertising, you can get the most bang for your buck.
Makes sense. Okay, and then what about FanDuel and DraftKings, who obviously don't own any land-based casinos but have vast national databases from their DFS? What are they doing?
Yeah, they're going into places like the Meadowlands. They're partnering with other companies doing that. So it seems like that's their avenue towards growth. And we'll see. Maybe their names give them so much recognition that people go to them instead of an MGM or a William Hill. It's really hard to say what the American consumer is going to do.
And do you think this is something that will be a zero-sum game, or there's going to be all these players are going to be out there and they'll all thrive on their own? Or what do you think? How is this going to play out over the next couple of years?
Well, I think it might look a lot like Las Vegas, where if you go back 30 years ago, there were a ton of different casinos in Las Vegas. And today there's basically 4 companies that own most of the casinos. So I think it might be something similar, just because building up this kind of network isn't something that everybody can do, and it might not be that big of a pie. Again, sports betting is about a 5% margin on those games, so it's not as big as other games. And it just seems like whoever gets in there and gets that critical mass is going to do best.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess a lot of it depends on if it's mobile, like how far out mobile spreads, because obviously the physical presence of a casino, if people have to go in it, then it's not going to be a zero-sum game, because some people are going to live closer to this casino who's partnered with
Yeah.
William Hill, and somebody who lives closer to that casino who's partnered with DraftKings, and the market gets divvied up that way. But if it's mobile, then it really could be a one guy just ends up dominating because his app is way better and he invests more in the customer or whatever. Kind of like Facebook, right? I mean, obviously there's Instagram, there's more than one social network, but I mean, Facebook's like the 800-pound gorilla, and it could get to be that way with mobile sports betting.
Yeah, and what I would predict you would see, or what I think you'll see, I don't want to predict, but what I think you would see is you would have some bettors who would download an app just because it looks cool. You're going to have the sharps who will probably download all the apps and shop around for lines and try to do that. And then you'll have a bunch of people who will just say whoever gives them the best deal they'll go with. So it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a thing where it's settled right out the gate. I think it's going to evolve a lot.
But there's definitely a first mover advantage because, especially in these the markets with mobile, some people are just going to, whatever app they download first, that's just what they're going to bet with. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's going to be kind of like, I downloaded Uber first, and it took me a long time before I switched over to Lyft. And it took some kind of moment where Uber just pissed me off. And I'm like, I'm going to try that Lyft thing.
Yeah, but that's how it happens. So they've got a good chance, but if they don't deliver, and again, it's people betting sports, you figure they're going to lose probably half of the time they bet, which is going to predispose them not to be too happy. I guarantee when you lose, it's kind of nice to have a scapegoat, like, oh, this is a bad app, ugh, as opposed to I chose wrong. So I could see people getting frustrated pretty easily, more so than if it was an app to donate money to PTAs or something like that. I could see people kind of being challenged there.
How much are the operators, the legitimate companies, thinking about the black market of sports betting? Because obviously that's very well established. There's apps out there that are illegal but still, I mean, they're definitely present where people can place bets or text message through a bookie. I mean, there's the black market for sports betting is very well developed, and I wonder how much these these legitimate operators like look at them as a competitor. Do they take them into account? Because the other thing is, and I've heard the CEO of William Hill bring this up. A state like Pennsylvania, I think, was looking at trying to charge 50 or 70% tax or something, some kind of insanely high tax rate that would make operating a sports book where the margin to your, like you brought up, is only 5%. A tax rate like that it wasn't even worth going into business. Whereas there are these illegal sportsbook operators that have an app that is on servers in the Bahamas or the Caribbean, where people place the bet through the app, and then they meet up with some sports bookie or some guy somewhere in their local city who pays them or collects some money. I mean, and that guy's not paying taxes on it. So there may be a lot of legitimate. There may be a lot of guys that are big sports bettors or active sports bettors that may decide not to switch to a legitimate operator just because it's easier, or they've already got a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to, do the customers, do the players, do the bettors have a reason to switch? And if they're paying taxes on their big wins, if it's inconvenient, if there's no credit, they might not want to switch. So basically, they have to win those customers over. There are no givens.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, with a physical casino, I mean a legitimate casino, of course you'd rather gamble there than some back alley where, like, you don't know if you're going to get jacked or whatever. It's just, there's a lot of factors. You're going to get paid. But when it's an online app, if it's sports betting where you've been dealing with the guy for a couple of years, he's going to pay you, you got that relationship,
Yeah.
you may not want to switch.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Oh yeah, totally.
What were some of the numbers? Because I've seen them thrown around. I can't remember if it was in your article about like how big the illegal gaming market
I
is.
never, even the IRS stopped estimating that like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. I never even tried to estimate that. And people get cute with it and throw out numbers. And my question is always, well, what's your methodology? And it's usually, what do you mean? Yeah. So, and I've seen some where they've taken records from bookies that got caught and reconstructed it and figured out that. So I've seen that. I mean, the problem is that's the guy that got caught. So it might not be representative of the whole business. It's really tough. It's really tough. And there's lots of ways you can kind of say, well, if every visitor to Las Vegas gambles as much in sports and that's it for the general population, but it's hard to say. So I never tried to estimate it. It just seems like it would be a meaningless number to me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Although a number of people are fascinated by it.
Yeah, and I'm sure, because I know I saw something like it was something in the billions of like how much is wagered illegally. But yeah, I'm really interested in seeing how that plays out when mobile gaming moves into these markets in the Northeast. If they're going to exceed expectations, or going to be below expectations, how's it going to go? So, anything else that we didn't cover on the sports betting?
I think we covered it all.
All right. Well, Dr. Dave, what are you working on now?
Right now I'm doing some more sports betting stuff for Forbes. At UNLV, I've got a ton of stuff I'm working on here at the center, getting those reports out and stuff like that. And that's always very time consuming. So working on that too.
Excellent. Well, we've got a lot of exciting stuff going on at URComped as well. And we got to figure out next year's meetup at sea with Dr. Dave. We'll have to start planning that out already.
What's the biggest thing happening at URComped right now?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, let's see. From a group trip perspective, probably New Year's Eve, we're going to Cuba. There's a big group. I think it's going to be like, right now it's 30-something cabins, so over 60 people. Yeah, it's a big group. We got a group in October where Tyler on the URCompt team is going to be hosting a group out of Galveston, one in December with Stephanie. And then I'm actually talking to Royal right now about putting together a few more trips. So it'll be 2019 is going to be a big, exciting year for us, and definitely want to get you back on a cruise because everyone that went to the talk enjoyed it.
That's great.
Yeah. So, and the other big thing is we've got a Facebook group. It's called Comped Travelers. So anybody out there listening or seeing this, definitely join that group because we'll have some insider, ask me anything with Dr. Dave just for the group. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you as always, Dr. Dave.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you next week.